Cut the Check podcast, brought to you by Craft Farmer, bringing you weekly motivation, unmatched cultivation tech, and telling you some badass war stories along the way. How did you ever even get into this industry? Like, what was the defining moment in your life, and where were you? How were you influenced?
So I got into the industry in 2003, I think, and I was a young single mom. I got married early. My son was about 6 months old when I divorced his dad, and moved out, was trying to figure out a way to support my kid, kind of move on with my life. And I had a bunch of friends that went to UC Berkeley, and long story short, I found out that they were growing cannabis in their garages, and I figured, what's this about? How do I get involved? And
so you were in the Bay Area at the time?
Yeah, I was in Oakland.
Okay.
And so right off of Fruitvale, like at the base of Oakland Hills. So
God, Oakland must have looked totally different then.
It
compared
was
to like
different.
what it's turned into.
Yeah, no, it was very different, and dangerous at the time, for sure. So I think a lot of my guy friends tried to deter me from growing for those reasons. But, I kept on it, and my brother started growing at the time. So I think I bugged him for about 6 months, and he dropped off like 6 or 8 analog ballasts on my doorstep and a tray of train wreck, and said, good luck. And figured I'd be out of business in 6
YouTube.
months. The YouTube didn't even exist back then. There wasn't a YouTube. You had to like buddy up with the guys at the hydro store and get information from them. So, I did that, built out my garage, pulled 1.5 pounds my first run, which I was very proud of at the time. And, now that's embarrassing, but
I don't know.
At the time it was great.
I'll take 1.5 pounds of kill over 2 pounds of mids any day right now. I'll take 1 pound of kill,
Yeah, no, for sure. So kind of got into it that way. Garages became houses became more houses.
Staying in Oakland?
Became warehouses. I actually had begun partnering with dispensaries in LA. So, got all the lawyer paperwork needed for the grow to go straight to the dispensary. So I always sold to dispensaries.
So you knew that right away? Like you knew that you had to make that connection to really continue on that path?
It took me maybe a year or two to figure it out. I think I sold to friends first, and, it went wherever. And then it was always kind of like, as a single mom, trying to find the safest route to not get your kid taken away, right? So partnering with dispensaries was a part of that. The medical program was a part of that. And really just genuinely wanting to help people, wanting to know like that end consumer and how your product does on shelves. So I partnered with some dispensary owners in LA, would always bring it down there from the Bay Area. And then, as you probably know, back then, it was legal to grow in your garage or your warehouse or your house under Prop 215, and certain counties had plant count limits, which were generous. And you could sell it to dispensary, but the trip in between was illegal.
Right.
So
that trip in between was illegal for like 20 years, which is
like
weird.
20 years, yeah.
The more comfortable we got cultivating, it was still like the scary part of it.
The scary part was the drive, right? So I ended up moving to LA to take the drive part out of it, and had some partners that were willing to put me in warehouses down there. And then got into the LA scene and did that for, a long time. Because
at that time, like I remember even anything that I was moving, everything went to LA. Like you could sell it locally, but everything was going to LA. Like LA was our vacuum.
Yeah,
basically.
It was. Yeah, I think there's more cannabis consumed in the LA basin than anywhere on Earth.
Yeah, it's wild. It was crazy.
And still to this day, I think
like
that's
it's wild
true.
Thinking about that and thinking about how many of us were on the road.
Yeah,
going down to LA at the same time. Like a lot.
Yeah, and having to do crazy things like, we would have like tail cars where you'd knock out a tail light on the tail car, so they got pulled over first, or, putting stuffing dog beds full of cannabis and then putting big old pit bulls on top of them, and no one's going to want to search that car or mess with it.
Right.
So yeah, a lot of that stuff and just got kind of a little too much. So moved to LA, it made more sense. And then started opening up warehouses in LA.
And then even before getting that far along, like there had to be like obviously this passion for what you were doing. Like something had to happen from the moment like your brother dropped that first equipment off, because like you don't do that just on the notation of survival. Like there has to be some kind of like draw to it. Like you have to be drawn to the plant to be doing what you're doing and continuing to do well and then expand like that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I've always had a really strong love for the plant and for cultivation in general, and just, putting your hands in the soil and watching something start from a seed to a full-grown flower to a harvested product that people are really happy with.
Right.
And I find that same passion in creating anything, whether it's building a building or putting together rooms or something like that. It's creating something that didn't exist before without, your assistance through the process. So yeah, I just really fell in love with the process of cultivating.
Nice.
Yeah.
And that led you down to LA. You started getting into warehouses down there.
Yep. Got into warehouses down there, large indoors. I went through that for many years, and kind of along this path, you always think that regulations are going to change.
Right.
And then you're standing at the end of 10 years and going, well, they really didn't change much.
Right.
So I think I got tired along the way after about 10 years of the constantly moving goalposts, friends and family going to prison, and getting heavy time and things like that actually got out of the industry at one point and was like, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. Had some big scares and left the industry completely and moved back up north and said, I'm just going to do a small garage grow and do my thing and probably get into something else. And about that time, I was introduced to consulting in Canada on some very large LPs. And so
someone had reached out to you about it?
Yeah, Ed Rosenthal actually was working on something up there, and he contacted me based on some things that I had built and was working with another consulting group, and they were building the largest facility in the world at the time, which was over in Nova Scotia, and said, can you come assist on this project? And so I thought, free trip to Canada. Right. They're going to find out I don't know what I'm talking about. They're going to throw me out of the room and send me back to the States. So, I sat on this, project that had like a $60 million budget at the time, 315,000 square foot building, and every top architect and engineer in the country that built all the hospitals, the airports, like those kind of firms. They rolled out their plans, and I realized these people have no idea what they're doing. And they're overspending tens of millions of dollars in the wrong directions because they have no idea what they're doing. So I stayed on that project for a year and a half. We rewrote their HVAC plans, their mechanical plans in about 48 hours and saved them like $4 million.
Wow. Just on sizing and...
They had like huge chilling towers spec'd and all this unnecessary equipment that works well for airports and hospitals, but doesn't work well for grows. We rewrote all of their systems. They were probably oversized by about 45% too.
Wow.
When you walk in and the first question they ask is like, what set points are we at? And the plans are already developed. You probably have some issues.
Wow.
So, that kind of became one consulting job led to another. And then that's how I started working on design build stuff. And
you did that for quite a while, right? I mean, you're still doing it, but
still doing it,
focusing on that
strictly focused on that for about 8 solid years of just design development, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and architectural plan sets, as well as applications. And we've worked in about, through that company, Cultivo, we've worked in about, at least 15 states, maybe more.
Wow.
All over the world.
Wild.
Yeah.
When did you get back, when did you start getting back into cultivation from the design aspect?
Well, I'm always indirectly involved in it because we do a lot of commissioning, setting up of systems. But for my own stuff, when COVID hit hard, this is like, December before last, I was on a plane every week. And, I lived in LA, but I worked out of state for 8 years. So I was always working in another state and traveling around the world. Then I couldn't get on a plane anymore. So I really had time to kind of sit and think. And, I was working from home and stuff. And I moved my whole staff to their houses and things like that. And I just started really thinking about, I think I always started Cultivo to help facilitate and fund my own grow in this legal space that we're in. And it went from, yeah, you could probably do that for a couple $1,000,000 to you need $20 million to enter this space. So overnight I realized that, architectural design development firm probably wasn't going to meet the numbers to build its own facility. So just started kind of talking to friends and partners and things like that. And, decided to go ahead and start a farm because it was never going to get there through the design firm. What
was it that that helped distinguish that decision to go to do full sun or outdoor when you've been doing, you've so many years of indoor cultivation and design and planning and everything?
So I think it has a lot to do with when you're designing a facility, you design them from the inside out. So the plant counts, the cycles, you can ultimately assimilate dollar value to what a facility costs, the ROI to pay back on that facility, and then whatever market you're in, right? And so when you're standing at the end of it and you kind of know everybody's numbers, and we've done greenhouse, outdoor, and indoor, you go with the numbers that make sense. So I thought that outdoor, one, I like the lifestyle and I like being outside and riding around on quads and, and that whole lifestyle of what outdoor growing brings. I like the different expression and the genetics that are different from indoors, and indoors are very expensive to build. And every time you open your eyes, somebody's putting up another 1,000 lights in California. Right. and it's just moving at an exponential rate. So I feel like for California specifically, unless you already have market share here, it's very dangerous to build large scale indoors right now in California without being able to cross federal lines, the saturation points that we're facing, and the amount of money to pay back on these facilities seemed scary to me.
Very valid points.
But if you've got market share and you have your niche, I know some very successful operators that are expanding and not thinking twice about it. And it makes sense, but it's, that was basically my reasoning was the numbers. And so I always go back to
And you were still in the LA area at that time?
Yeah, I was in the LA area and then moved back up north. I've always kind of bounced back and forth between Northern California and Southern California for my entire career. But just made the transition, moved to Lake County a year and a half ago.
And that was because of that was more appealing as far as county laws and what you could do and cost of land and everything?
Yeah, all of those reasons. And it's since changed. I don't know if I would make the same decision today as I made back then.
I don't think we'd make the same decisions yesterday as we would today with how much everything's changing.
Yeah, that's always the case, especially in this industry. I think the ability to pivot and keep moving is what keeps us all here, right?
And so what, you ended up in Lake County a year and a half ago?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Ended up in Lake County a year and a half ago.
That spot you have is like a gold mine. That's probably one of the nicest places I've ever seen in Lake County.
Yeah, I'm hoping to turn it into an educational center where we can bring people out and teach them about farming and teach them about, nursery process, cultivation process, all the way down to trimming. So that was the idea behind that estate property.
I mean, I like the education thing. I'm all about education. I feel like there's not very many options
Yeah.
as far as education. And then not only that, but like from people that really know what they're doing. You know, I see like a lot of consultants or things like that, and they just don't have the background in cultivation like you think they would, you know?
Yeah, I figured if you can get people up to an operating farm, and it would be really good for businesses that are looking at, hey, I have to hire 10 people for my nursery operation.
Right.
And it's expensive to hire people, to train them, to put them through all the operational stats. And you know, with, especially with cultivators, you know, and nursery guys, like I feel like I know within a week whether or not somebody's going to be good or not. So to have to go through that whole hiring process and then figure out that person's not going to work, why not send them to like a training accreditation, and you can kind of get a sense from the teachers or the people involved whether or not you want to like onboard that portion of your staff. You know,
would they stay? Are you setting up like a place for people to stay too, or how does that work?
Yeah, I would convert the estate to house people. So it all depends on the zoning and if we can get it through. It's still in licensing process right now. Lake County released this kind of micro license that would allow for something like that, but they haven't released the process to get through it in over 8 months. So we're still sitting there waiting.
Just to see if you can even do it or not?
Yeah. So it might take rezoning or something like that. But either way, I think we'll enact that plan. It just may not be on that property, but hopefully it will, because it's prime place for it.
And there was like I've seen some videos that have been posted that like show like a project that you're on, where you guys are like filling greenhouses with like little carts and stuff like that. Was that this year?
Yeah, that was Santa Cruz. So we grew in Santa Cruz in hoop houses, like on a transitioned existing farm that had all the irrigation, had the hoops in.
And the idea is to be able to do that in Lake County?
I would love to do that in Lake County. However, they made cannabis a commercial use as opposed to an agricultural use. So then when you enter things like hoop houses that would be ag exempt or have these certain exemptions around them, you actually have to go get structural building permits for like tarps, which is absolutely ridiculous.
Calaveras too, same thing.
It triples the price of installing the hoops and puts it through like, you know, a 9 to 12 month building process. When any other farmer can just go out and throw up hoops. So at that point, it may not be financially viable to do hoops in Lake County. We're still trying to get their education up to par with like what happens in traditional agriculture and why you don't need structural permits for hoop houses. I think they just think a greenhouse is a greenhouse and that's all there is, and take it through the building department. So yeah, we were calling hoop house companies going, can you guys develop some kind of structural plans? And like, you know, there's just silence on the other end of the phone because they've never been asked that before because they're hoops.
Exactly.
So yeah, no light assist.
Nor should you have to go through that.
Yeah, no light up.
Stingent process.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I think that's just part of any new county with cannabis licensing is they're trying to understand it instead of just liken it to other industries that have the same uses.
How large is that canopy in Santa Cruz?
That was 2.5 acres. But that was under tarp and we had very, you know, wide aisleways. So it was probably an acre. And
were you depping out there or was that just sun grown?
Yeah. Sun grown hoops. Yeah.
So what's the point of the hoop if you're just doing sun grown? What does it do for you?
It helps with different climates, like different weather. Like in Lake County, could actually extend your season. You could probably get a later harvest. You could fight off that early frost. In Santa Cruz, you have a lot of overcast days and things like that where you're trying to keep moisture off your canopy. So it's just like an extra layer of protection, and it can actually prolong the season in some instances.
Got it.
Yeah.
What is the majority of like that flower grown down there used for? Is it like concentrate? Is it bagged flower? What is it contracted?
Yeah, right now It's sitting in storage. We're waiting on our licensing, so I can't move it until we have a processing facility in Lake County, and we were going to run a lot of solventless and things like that. So it's just in licensing
Crazy.
purgatory right now.
That's gnarly.
Yeah.
So like everybody's still waiting to get paid from that one.
Oh no, we paid everybody.
No, but I'm just saying you're waiting to get paid.
We're waiting to get paid.
At the top,
everyone's been paid.
Yeah, at the top, you're waiting to get paid still.
Yes.
And the season's over and you're going into next year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we put a large portion of it in the freezer just because we were supposed to get our license probably 3 times over for the processing facility. So it's been a bit of like just living in Groundhog Day.
And then obviously, like, when does your season start this year at that location?
We're not going to cultivate at that location this year. We're probably not going to cultivate this year because I'm really waiting on this processing facility to get up and running. And that's been my primary focus. So.
And did you build a new building for that? I think, did I see like some badass building on like one of your pictures or pages, or a new steel building that went up or something?
No, that's a client in LA. No, we repurposed a 67,000 square foot across 7 different buildings, old plastics factory in Lake County called Parker Plastics. So the business was around for about 60 years, and each 10 years they added another building and created this kind of really cool campus. So we're repurposing that building for a use that's really more environmentally friendly, and kind of, provide a lot of jobs. And we're focusing heavily on solventless processing.
Okay.
So we've spent quite a bit of money in solventless equipment. We can run, I think, about 900 pounds a day.
Wow.
So
does that all have to be washed when you say solventless?
Yeah, so it looks like big brewery equipment. There's a giant platform you have to get on. The ice maker's 15 feet tall.
Wow.
So the goal is to make the cost of processing solventless cheaper. Nobody's really scaled it yet.
Right.
So that small farmers can actually afford to put their cannabis through processing, because right now we're hearing stories of farmers that are just tilling their crops into the ground because it's either too expensive to process. They don't know where the end line is that they're going to sell it to. And so I think by building this scaled facility in the middle of this kind of grow mecca and not being predatory in terms of pricing, will allow everybody to stay in business longer and make more money. So
is there like a goal to bring like a certain, because right now hash is pretty expensive. Like insolventless has always been kind of like the higher tier.
Yeah.
Is the goal to be able to make it where it's more of like a household form of concentrate, or still kind of like a boutique product but just more readily available?
Yeah, I mean, I can only control the market from our side of it and make the cost of production cheaper. What we've seen is a lot of times you're hearing farmers that are getting $300 a pound right now, and all of these horror stories about the state of the industry. And then I go walk into 15 dispensaries and their prices haven't changed.
Exactly.
So I don't know the end of the line, if they're going to make it cheaper, if that ticket will eventually come down, if they're getting it for a lower cost. Historically, I would say no. It doesn't happen that often. But you can at least keep the farmers in the game longer.
And you'd buy so you can buy their material basically from them, or they're hiring you as a third party, like extraction company?
Either one. So we're kind of a la carte. We can stop at any stage in the process. We have about 50,000 square feet that's just allocated towards drying, and then 15,000 square feet that's allocated towards I think we've got, what do we have in there? We've got solventless processing. We've got vape pens, pre-rolls, infused pre-rolls, any of those SKUs we can pump out at scale. And then we also have we can do trimming and packaging as well. And then if they've already got a brand, they've got market share, then we just take their labels and we can slap them on a bag and get them out to market.
And then you have a site out there too that you're working on, right?
For cultivation.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got 3 farms in the queue. We're trying to figure out what the best path forward for those farms are. We're launching 3 of our own brands as well. And then, we're going to try to maybe co-op with some small farmers that couldn't get through the process and give them a place to grow.
How many people are involved on like a project this large?
I have a staff
Not employees necessarily, but
yeah.
like when you start looking at the top of this pyramid, like how many bosses, I guess, would you say, like, does it take to like really put like this stuff together? Like what kind of team are you working with at the top?
Our small core team is about 14 people. And that's, employees day to day. And then from that, it kind of ripples out to, engineering firms, consultants, lobbyists, attorneys, like countless others. Like there's, probably 30 to 40 people that are pushing this thing forward alongside industry associations and community outreach and, all of those things that come along with getting these licenses.
Do you have to outsource investors for something that large, or is it done in-house?
I have one investor partner, and so really it's I've been very, very blessed that I don't have to go out and raise money to a bunch of different funds and then have multiple bosses. So the nice thing about our situation is we have complete autonomy, and it's driven by legacy industry operators. So it's pretty much me and my partner, Shord Brooks, who started the company. And then we have one investor that has put up the funding as well as, all of our own funding. But we all kind of came together, and we have the autonomy to push this thing forward without interference as long as it's successful.
What do you see like happening with the industry like right now? Like, are you seeing or hearing things getting slightly better, or is it staying kind of like where it's been? I feel like we're at like this all-time low with like pack prices and kind of like what we see amongst like our peers, like as far as like struggles. And, I remember this happening like in, I don't know if it was like 2015 or 2016 when we hit that kind of real low, where like really fire indoor was selling for like 14, 15. But I almost have like this sense that it's worse now because back then, people were still getting like 600, let's say, for their outdoor, which now I'm hearing 250.
Cost of production and people are failing at an exponential rate, and
it's really hurting the legacy growers tremendously.
It is. And so I think that, when it comes to outdoor and when it comes to anything, it's going to be your cost of production and the quality that you put in the bag. Unfortunately, last year we had really bad, unprecedented weather that like nobody's talking about. So the whole Central Coast, like all of those big farms, out of all of California, you have very specific areas, maybe 5% of California, that allows any kind of scaled cultivation. And I don't mean unlimited, but I just mean scaled cultivation. You've got, Santa Cruz, Monterey County, Santa Barbara County. You've got the desert areas down by Coachella.
Which are the biggest, right? Like that whole kind of Central Valley.
The Central Valley. And they got hit hard with bad weather. So I know that there's a lot of bad product out there right now. And I am hearing more that there's a lack of really good, like A-grade product.
So that bad work is what really kind of came in and had such a large effect?
No, multiple issues. I think no one expected all of Southern Oregon to light up with hemp farms and move that this way.
I have someone local here that like was a big distro guy for a long time. Like this dude was the big tuna.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I worked with him for a long time. And I remember I've always played devil's advocate with people.
Yeah.
I've been like more of like the reserved guy, and I'm so small scale. And like whenever people come to me with like these kind of outlandish ideas, I'm like, I don't know. It seems kind of you know, a little scary. And he was one of those dudes who went all in and bought 2 massive pieces of property, like large acreage that was hemp, you know, planted his little tiny corner,
Yeah.
you know, in the bottom corner that they, you know, they come out, you hold their hand, you lead them to where you want tested. They test it, and the rest of his fucking property was like all autoflower, THC and stuff. But he had like 2 massive properties that did that. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, if you know about this and you're doing it, everyone else has already been doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he went up there and lost everything.
Oh, really?
Lost everything because, you know, by the time that hit, the market had crashed so low. Mm-hmm. He's selling, you know, bows at like fucking 350, 400, if he could even get that.
Yeah.
You know, like watching him deteriorate and like just the way he looked and his energy, and like it just was like a shell of the person that was like a fucking boss here in the county for so long.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess I worry about anybody that's been on an upwards trajectory for many, many years going like this, that's never lost, because, you know, just in life, in business, things happen.
Right.
And I've seen that a lot. And so I always tell people, you know, don't wager what you can't lose, first of all. And this has always been an industry where we're so used to like putting it all on black all of the time. But you have to draw a line where you got to know when to get out. Like, you know, maybe don't mortgage your family's house. Maybe you know that you've got enough money to pay your rent. Like, what can you afford to lose? And then draw the line there. And, you know, when you make some money, squirrel some of it away, and don't just go, okay, I'm going bigger the next time, because we did that. And now the stakes are higher. And I'm telling you, none of us have enough money to be like all on black, because somebody else is out there like, oh yeah, we've got a hedge fund with $500 million, you know?
Right.
So make safe, smart investments. And just because it's worked when you're building a 50 light room or a 60 light room for so many years doesn't mean it's going to work in this like new world that we're living in, you know?
I've also heard some pretty outlandish numbers of like how much work like goes under the table, you know, from producers, you know, upwards of like 75, 80%.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've seen firsthand that whether the producer puts it under the table or the fucking burner distro buying it, like it, you know, majority of it gets pushed under the table. Who's responsible for that? The state, on cracking down and really making these, like, I don't feel like there's any checks and balances. Like watching some of the people come through the facility, like when I was running Cultivation, and I mean, it's obvious that they're not legit, yet they're rolling in with some kind of license.
Yeah.
But we don't see like the state really do anything. And so it seems like they're not protecting the people that are licensed and that have gone through this wild, crazy thing. And it's like forcing them to sell to these kind of fucking, you know, burner distros or whatnot.
They're not. And I've seen it before. You know, before there was a pathway to legalization, you would see this happen. And I think the feds and, you know, they like when people get really, really big because they have more money to take. Like they'll let you run for 4 or 5, 6 years and everybody thinks it's okay and everybody thinks it's normalized and hey, everybody's doing it. And that becomes okay. And then they come in and they just wipe out the biggest operators that they can get their hands on. So I know it happens that way. It's not the way I run my business. But it's definitely, it keeps small operators playing longer because they're not paying the high taxes. Like our taxes are so insane that for most it's not sustainable. So when friends of mine that are trying to enter this new legal world and call me on the phone for advice, and they're like, hey, should I get legal and should I go about these steps? Like my answer is usually no, not unless you have at least $10 million at your hand that you're willing to lose.
Right.
Like otherwise, you know, you're going to have to do something illegal anyway.
Right.
Or you're going to have to, you know, figure it out. And so it's a unique situation in California, and out of the 15 states that I've worked in and different countries, I've never seen anything this skewed and this unfair and this corrupt at the same time. So,
like, I've been doing a lot of work in Michigan, you know, and I remember thinking to myself, like, going out there for the first time, like, okay, I don't, you know, my home is in California. I'm going to operate there forever. Even if I like retire young, like I'll never want to go anywhere. And then, you know, meeting the right person out there and seeing like their rules and their taxation. And it's just like, like, this is fucking insane. Like, how could a state get it so wrong, like California, and overtax so badly? Like, Michigan has kind of like this 10% tax.
Yeah.
It kind of seems like cultivation is not taxed. Yeah. Cultivators can move their product to any dispensary directly without having to, you know, pay a heavy distribution fee. And it just seems more, you know what I mean? Like it's a lot more friendly, you know, as operation.
Any state that I've worked in is, I've never seen something this egregiously taxed. And I think it's not just specific to cannabis. I think it's a lot of businesses in California.
Right.
Like, you talk to any multimillionaire, billionaire that lives here, I guarantee you they didn't develop their businesses here.
Right.
You know, like,
I'm surprised they're still here. You see so many people leaving.
They come back, they buy a house, and then they run their business out of state somewhere else. But yeah, so many people are leaving. I was just in LA, and like every third shop was empty. You know,
like
going
commercial
down
building, you mean?
Melrose or commercial buildings. Yeah, just every third shop was empty, totally vacant. Like, just a whole city of like vacant buildings, you know. And there's things that they could have done, but what did they do? They suspended rents for 18 months, and then everything you owed was due on that 18 months, even though you hadn't been working the last 18 months prior. You know? So I think California has been that way for a long time.
And the only time I mean, obviously you don't hear everything, but like publicly what we've seen, the only time I've seen like California doing regulating is like two really fucked up times. Like, we saw them here at Emerald Cup, you know, like harassing.
That was
think
crazy.
Masonic was part of that. Trevor from Calaveras was part of that. Like,
unbelievable.
You know, to harass these guys that they brought seeds that they can make legally from plants that you're legally allowed to grow, and then try to like crack down on them. I think there's like 16 or 20 fucking CDFA officers that came down on them for that stupid thing.
It's absolutely nuts. And, you know.
And then we saw the absolute most disgusting display of state power ever when they just recently fucked with the Jungle Boys. Like, just like.
Yeah. And that was really telling, because, you know, here you have a group that has done everything in their power to become
not even their power,
legally
like they've done
compliant, and you know, and they had an appeal. And they were just like, we don't know why you got raided. Like, it's a mistake. Sorry. Yeah, it's just unbelievable. They've become really anti-business here, and anti-cannabis business in general. And so I think, you know, we're pushing things forward with a bunch of groups that I'm working with to try to lobby for tax reform. I do think we'll see something this year. There are 4 bills that were recently introduced. And some of them you have to be careful, and you have to read the whole thing, because some of them just push taxes down the line to the excise tax on the retail end, but then eliminate cultivation tax. And so it's still the same issue. So we do need tax reform across the board, or this industry isn't going to survive.
And it seems like the only ones that I've seen recently do any kind of thing like that is like on the local level. But it's like we're so taxed on the state level. Like the local county reform is great that you guys are seeing something. It doesn't help as much as a state reform would.
Yeah, no. And so what we did is I've been working with the LCCA, which is the Lake County Cannabis Alliance, a group of attorneys, Sarah Bardner from Golden State Affairs, and they came up with this 2-page resolution that you take to the Board of Supervisors, and basically has the Board of Supervisors push on the state legislator to eliminate cultivation tax altogether. And we've gotten that passed in several different counties, probably 12 or 13 different counties. And so when that kind of pressure comes from your local legislators, I believe it will change at the state level. So that's kind of our new fight that we're going through right now. Sonoma's passed it, Mendocino's passed it, Lake County, Santa Cruz, Oakland, Alameda, Calaveras, Rio Dell, Humboldt, bunch of them. So
do you do any work with the I don't know what the guy's name is, but I see all his videos from like the Catalyst. Do you know who I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about, but no.
He's like always just fucking really pushing for like reform and doing things like.
No, we're leaving it up to like the board of supervisors in different counties to push it forward, because they're seeing the mass exodus on the local level of licenses that aren't getting renewed. Local operators that can't afford to pay their taxes at the local level. So I believe we'll see something, and there are some bills out there right now that are, I think there's 4 of them specifically. I don't know which one I'm backing yet. I'm still researching it, but.
Is there any more development with the situation that happened with the Jungle Boys?
I don't know. I haven't talked to, I'm not in the loop on that.
The last thing that I saw is like when they reached out.
Yeah.
Like, it was like CDFA. They're like, we don't know about this. Or some weird response where they said like, we have to look at this internally. Like we didn't.
Yeah, I think that was their attorney where those messages came from. But so yeah, they're. To my knowledge, their attorney couldn't get answers out of why they were raided. And it doesn't make any sense. So, yeah, I'm not in the loop on that. But
what a weird fucking crazy situation to have your shelves cleared out, your money taken for the day, and then told to like continue operating.
The tip jars,
like
people's tip money.
Super weird.
It's super weird, and then it just pushes, one of our biggest and most well-respected operators in the state. Like, I would be looking at that going, yeah, I don't know if I want to build more in California. I don't know if I want to stay here for this, No. I'm already thinking that.
For
so
sure.
I know that.
But then like to even think to make the decision to like, okay, so we're going to like just put everything, like get distro out here to restock our whole store. And like, we're going to roll the dice now. Like they just came in and did all this. Like what keeps them from.
Yeah. And they already sell out of like, they have a very, they can't build grows fast enough for the amount of cannabis they sell.
For sure.
So like, I don't think that.
And I mean, of all people, like, Ivan and Juice has done so well over all these years. Like they know that all eyes are on them. They know that they're public enemy number 1. They've been sued by so many different entities, and like if anybody's going to be operating and doing things right, it's them, especially across multiple.
Yep. Yep. They've got in-house compliance. They've got a team of attorneys. They've got people on top of every aspect of compliance, and they're well within their right to argue a tax fee because the county wasn't allowing payments, wasn't accepting payments during COVID. So, yeah, it seems really ridiculous that could possibly even be legal, and that, operators could face making one mistake, or they make a mistake on their end, and you got guns in your face.
Well, I think
and
that's
all
a
of your
problem
products
too.
Being taken.
That's another problem is like, it's almost as if the state has there's no recourse. They can just do what they want. Like who makes that decision? Who within the CDFA can say, hey, we need to go raid the Jungle Boys location because their like who gets to make that decision? There's only a few people, I imagine, that get to like make that call.
Somebody at the top of the food chain made that call, and I'm surprised if they're still employed. There's
some crazy rumors swirling around too about like that whole situation. Have you heard some of them?
No.
So there's been lots of stuff with like Big Mike and like how much money he's donated to like Gavin Newsom.
Okay.
And like how much he's paid like Gavin Newsom. So I was reading this thing, and like I don't get into conspiracy theories at all.
Yeah.
But he's donated like a tremendous amount of money, like $1 million, or thrown like these, private fucking fundraisers. I would never ever think we're at this point in like 2024 where you can have that kind of power, you know, or influence over someone. So I don't, you know, I don't personally believe it. It's just like one of the things that I heard.
Yeah, I try to stay out of the rumor mill myself. If it's unfounded and it's conjecture, then that's all it is.
Do you know anything about the beef between them? Like, is it strictly just over the nutrient situation, or is there like a background to it?
No, but what I can tell you is that Ivan is definitely not a person that goes around talking about other people.
For sure.
He's not someone that's gonna, you know, like I've remembered like Big Mike's name being brought up around him, and he'd say something like nothing at all.
Right.
You know, so he's really not one to wage war on somebody unless it's like really, really warranted. You know, otherwise it's just, he's too busy. He's not going to get into the drama.
Like when you're at the top, I mean, it's the same thing with, like, we were talking about Brandon earlier, you know, like when you're the cream, when you're the best, when you're at the top, like why even, I mean, even being like at the bottom, like why even waste that headspace on thinking about anyone who doesn't like you or has anything to say, you know? Cause I get that shit. Hey, do you know what this person said? It's like, I don't care. It's a free country. They can say whatever they want about me. Yeah. It's not going to bother me. Like I've got my lane and my car's driving pretty fast, you know?
Yeah. Like time is money, and I work 15 hours a day. I'm not going to waste time on.
And when I think about those things, like what Mike did at that, it was the big Vegas show this year, when he made all those pallets of, like, dude, your stock plummets. Like for me, when I think of somebody, or like, that's such a embarrassing like move on your behalf. Like, I don't know
what he did. What did he do?
He made like these fucking like pamphlets about Jungle Boys.
Oh,
like,
he did?
Yeah. Like just like totally dissing them, and how like Big Mike's going to paddle the jungle, like spank them. And like, it was like, wow. I mean, we're talking pallets of like these things, and it was just like,
that's very
when I see
strange
stuff like that done, like how is there someone not in your circle that's stopping you from doing like really stupid, embarrassing things?
Yeah, it's like the
and it has to be
like the Trump of cannabis. Like,
it had to be like
who's pulling you back at that level, right?
No, seriously, like that's what I know. Like when I see things happen, you know, and I see like bad decisions being made, it's like, how come there's not somebody around you? Like, how do you not have someone in your circle that like is looking out for you, says like, dude, this is a really bad decision? And I don't see like how there's any other beef besides like Athena coming in and dominating the industry.
It's like that emperor wears no clothes thing, right?
Right.
Like everyone in his circle is probably pumping him up, or he doesn't keep them in the circle. And that's how bad decisions with powerful people are made. But yeah, I mean, Athena came in, they dominate it. I definitely recommend them to like our clients that need a foolproof, you know, regimented schedule of nutrients and aren't, you know, like it's just so easy to use. It's such a good program. So
not only that, but I think there's like, a lot of like,
if it works, it works. In any business, it should stand on its own merit and not tear down other businesses around that. You know, I've seen that where people come in and they're like, oh, I got to buy all the big farms in the area and I'm going to ice everybody out. And they launch PR campaigns against their competitors. And meanwhile, it's like the industry is so big. There's really room, you know, especially with nutrient companies and lighting companies and everything else.
And I think like some of the things, you know, that like that have been said about like Athena aren't true, you know? And like, even like before I used it, like when you hear enough like people telling you like, oh, you know, like it's not as terpy or this or that, like, you know, you might think that, but like since I've started using it, you know, like there's some people on like my team where like they won't fucking buy flower if it doesn't smoke like really well. And like when I'm saying smoke really well, like taste and everything. Yeah. And there's been like these rumors about like Athena being like terpless, and it's like I wouldn't be able to sell my flower if it was fucking terpless, you know?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it leads back to, like, I got this, one of the guys on my team that I've worked with for a long time, who always says, like, all parts of the system are integral to the system as a whole.
What does that mean?
Like every part of your cultivation facility is integral to your end product.
Got
So
it.
like if your environment's not on point,
Right.
something else isn't going to be on point. If your nutrients, your lighting, there's so many other, like, okay, it's not terpy, like, let me see your room.
Exactly.
What else are you doing?
Exactly.
Where'd your genetics come from? So
Exactly.
a lot of times people don't realize that. I think environment is often one of the biggest problem in facilities.
Totally.
And so people don't realize that, like, your environment drives your VPD and your nutrient uptake. So if your environment isn't key and on point, you might be locking out those nutrients.
Right.
So it's just a bigger part of the picture. So I always question when people blame it on one thing specifically, then it could be many
And then
different
there's
things.
just so many different aspects to that line that makes it so cutting edge. Like how easy it is to use. Mixing ratios are all the same across the board.
Yeah.
They have all their doser settings on the bag. Like what they've done is
Yeah.
truly incredible.
Yeah. And they've got some key partners in there that have been doing, nutrients for a very long time and understand it thoroughly. So yeah, I've got nothing but good responses around using their products, but it's usually through our facilities where the rooms are on point.
For sure.
Irrigation's on point.
I have close friends who've won big awards. Like I have friends who have taken home trophies from the ZA Olympics.
Yeah.
And they use Athena and that's it. And so every time someone's like, oh, well, it's not terpy, I'm like, well, do you see those trophies right there? Mm-hmm. They were grown with Athena,
Yeah, and I mean, terpy, like, it sounds like a genetic
For sure.
issue.
For sure. I mean, MPK is MPK.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, do you think that flushing with hypochloric acid can have an effect on your terpenes?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't even want to speculate. What do you think?
I mean, I don't know. I think it's just opinion. I don't know enough about, like, you won't ever find me at an event, like in a circle of people talking about things. Like I've gotten to where I am because, like, I feel like I work with the plant really well, and I'm more of like a plant speaker than like a data or scientific guy.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to go stand next to Nelson in a conversation where they're like geeking out about stuff, I don't know what it does to like the where are the terpenes in the plant? Is it in the THC heads? Like the resin glands is where that flavor is, right?
I mean, I think that the terpenes are throughout, but yes, I mean, that's where they're more highly expressed, but sure.
I mean, I've always flushed with water my whole life, so I don't see the point to flush with, hypochloric acid or a flushing product. I've never used one.
Yeah.
Never flushed with
Same.
any other product there before. I think also though that when you're making a nutrient company like that, like, so what I see with the flush is that when you, like, I think they recommend flushing with hypochloric acid. I think they're thinking about a lot more things than just like, flushing your plant.
Yeah.
Like they're resetting your entire system for you and disinfecting it during that flush period so you can reload right away without having your, like, an irrigation reset procedure. So when I think of irrigation reset procedure before I used Athena, like, it was involved. Your room's already done, and then you go to your tank or your dosers, you got to clean everything out.
Yeah.
You're then flushing with green clean acid and leaving it in your fucking system for 3 hours at 1 to 100. And then you go back there and flush that again. Then you got to do it with fucking Sanidate. Then you got to flush that again. Like, that's lots of time and hours. And, and I think that and I don't know, I've never talked to anybody about it, but possibly the idea of flushing with the with the cleanse is resetting that system right away so you're ready to go.
Yeah. I think that is definitely one of the primary purposes.
And at a
of
massive
it.
scale,
Yeah.
like to think what I just mentioned, to like reset and do all that stuff, like you could lose a half a day or a day at least on that system where you don't have to do that.
Yeah, and if you have a big system that's kind of serving that whole facility in different zones, then I mean, yeah, you want to flip your rooms in a day and have them
Right.
replanted the next day,
And
even in a big facility.
For sure. So I don't know. For me, I haven't been using it. I haven't been flushing with cleanse. I cut the cleanse out.
Cut the cleanse out.
And everything's really clean.
And everything's still clean. I saw your pictures of
Super
your
clean.
filters and everything. Like,
So,
yeah.
So a little background story from that. I've got a good friend of mine, Chris. He was in the Air Force and he served, and like he's been like he's like my go-to for everything. He's my guy, like most trusted, like, you know, like
Sure.
does everything for me. Like I wouldn't be able to do the stuff that I'm doing in my life if I didn't have him by my side and on my team. Like when I look back of like all the years, like, you know, I'm able to do a lot of my shit because of him. And that also leaves him with a lot of problems when I'm not around if something happens.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And he gets worked up really easily, you know, about things like, fuck, like, why isn't this working and this and that? And like, dude, there's this time, like when I was still using Front Row and the new B came out, and, you know, like it left us with a lot of problems. Like every day we were having a lot of issues, and I'm not saying it's because of the nutrients. You know, every location can be slightly different with water tables, and why can this happen? And why does this happen? We don't really ever know why certain things happen when you can be an isolated incident. It doesn't make sense, you know, but I'm on the other end trying to do work and shit somewhere else, and I have him calling me like fucking losing his shit. You know what I mean? Dealing with this like every day. And all I know is like once we switched to Athena, no problems.
Yeah.
Like it cleaned our entire fucked up system from before just running it.
Yeah.
And so like in these videos, like when I post these videos of Chris, like with the filter, you can like see and hear like the excitement and relief like in his fucking voice, you know, and then like to just to see him as a person. And like even me, I remember like questioning myself, you know, like when I was going through these issues and like I was having these problems in these rooms, like I like felt like fucking like almost like a scam artist in a way, you know, like I was going home at night and like my wife's like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, I don't think I can do this. Like I'm supposed to be given
imposter syndrome.
Yeah, dude, that's exactly how I felt. Like people are hitting me up for advice, and like I'm having issues, and I've lost plants. Like like what the fuck is going on? Like I started like looking at myself like I'm having these problems, and like the moment I stopped and I went to Athena, like I felt like this massive weight was lifted off my shoulders.
Now it's funny because my business partner has been growing for 30 some odd years, and he's been a breeder. People will always come to him and say like, well, you're the expert. And he goes, I'm really not the expert because I'm always doing something new. Right. So that doesn't mean I'm the expert anymore. It's really just about always pushing your own boundaries and figuring out what works, and then supplying that advice to other people once you've figured it out. Right. And, I really like it because for me, every facility that we build is somebody scaling up. Very few people, maybe like 2% of my clientele are like, oh yeah, I've got 20 of these. I just need 3 more. They're always pushing the boundaries. They're always scaling into something else. So you want to give these clients something as easy as possible, so you're not fielding calls at 4 a.m. from all over the world because somebody's system doesn't work right, or they're like, I'm the person they call when things fail. And people know I always have an open line and I'll always take the call. So having the ability to put them into a program where the customer service is outstanding, someone's always going to pick up your call and get you to the end of the line that you need to get to is phenomenal. So yeah, I love their products for so many more reasons than just the product, but really having that customer service and that background help to help coach my growers through it, so I'm not getting the calls, is amazing.
There's this video that like when we went probably like almost, I don't know, 30 days in or something, where we had to stop using, we switched like at day 20, and you can like hear it in Chris's voice. He's like looking at this filter and he's like, bro, what the fuck have we been doing? You know what I mean? Like directed at me.
What have you been doing?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, he's like, bro, what the fuck have we been doing? You know what I mean? And like,
yeah.
And just seeing him, since we've switched and like don't have issues that we shouldn't have, and like we can focus on cultivation, he's blossomed.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so a lot of people like ask for certain things, and I really think that what you're using and the success you have has a tremendous amount of play on like your mentality and your self-confidence and all that, because like how I feel now compared to like how I felt 3 months ago, like I'm on a totally different level as far as like my self-confidence and like going out into the field and like helping people. Like it's like a different person.
Yeah. Cause it's great when you find those like bulletproof plans that works and you can hang your hat on over and over again.
And then you can eliminate yourself as the problem.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah, for sure.
Cause like I'm a self-blame person. Like anytime something happens, if I'm a part of it, it's like, what have I done to create this?
Yeah.
If someone makes a mistake and does something, it's like, okay, where did I drop the ball on telling them how I want it done, explaining this process? This is my fault somehow. Like I need to figure out,
especially with indoor, because you're
100%.
You're God in that environment, right? It's not, there was a fire, then we had an early rain, there was an early frost that came through. Like
everything comes back to head of cultivation.
You can always liken something back to a person in the facility.
Right.
And then if you're head of cultivation, it's going to be that you didn't explain it well enough to the person down here or over here or whatever, that the information didn't translate. So the more problems you can take out of that, the better. And I remember my brother, he ran an organic soil farm in Mendocino for like 20 years. And so I didn't realize how much pressure that was to be on top of like everybody's livelihood. If you get a hot batch or it doesn't work, and half of Mendocino is buying soil from you, it's just an incredible responsibility. I don't know,
right.
Nutrients, soil, to be in charge of people's medium is just such a huge responsibility. So when you finally find a company that goes out of its way to, source the right products, and right now we have like fertilizer shortages across the entire world. So it's going to get really interesting as these supply chains shrink and these shortages start happening. You're going to want those dependable companies that are consistent and honest with the products that they're bringing forward.
Right. Speaking of that, like doesn't your crane like produce some crazy amount of like one of our most important ingredients in fertilizer?
I'm not sure which one it is. I know that they're like the breadbasket of Europe, and they produce a lot of food, agriculture. I'm sure
right.
That's probably
wheat
right.
Or something. I heard like they produce like 80% of like the world's wheat or some wild shit like that. Yeah,
it's scary. So I'm telling everyone to plant gardens.
I mean, everybody who's got gluten issues aren't going to be phased, but everyone else. I'm a doughboy. That's wild.
Yeah.
How have you stayed like, what's the word I'm looking for? Excited about, like working on all these projects, and when you're doing all this stuff and you've been seasoned for so long, like how do you stay excited and passionate about all these new projects and clients? And it just seems a little overwhelming.
Well, I think when I'm doing design build, the most important thing I ever did was keeping my company small enough so that I could turn down any clients that I didn't want to take. Where we had the ability to scale very large at one time, but I knew I would have to take anyone that kind of came through the door. So being able to pick and choose my clients really helps in that situation, because if you're in a design build process with somebody on a new project, you're looking at anywhere from 1.5 to 3 years that you have to spend with that group or that person. And so really picking clients that, you like being around, that are good people, that are driving the industry forward in the right way is definitely key. For me in this industry, I've been doing this, 18 years. And I think I kind of change it up like every 7 years, like I grew for a long time. I got tired of growing. Then I got into design build, and then that was something new to me. Now I'm going back to growing and getting into manufacturing. So there's so many facets of this industry that are just incredible and I find really appealing, that I just kind of pivot and go towards, it's such a nascent industry that you're always learning. Like, I look at what I knew 5 years ago and it's laughable. And so I think in the next 5 years, you're only going to absorb that much knowledge, that much information. And at the rate that we're downloading, it doesn't get boring. It doesn't get monotonous. Like, I can't picture myself in any other industry in the entire world that I would enjoy doing more than I enjoy cannabis. So I think just keeping it fresh and relevant, and then knowing to say no to the things that don't serve you because the money sounds good. There's so many paths that you can go down where it's like, oh, this is, how many times have you heard like, oh, this company is going to be worth $100 million like by next year. And you don't like the people in charge or the people that are spearheading it or how they're, so just getting really used to the word no when it doesn't feel right. And then saying yes to the opportunities that come along. I find the more that I say no, whether it's the project, the client, situation, those situations that are right for you do come along and then just kind of plop themselves in your lap and you're like, oh, that's why I said no to all these other $100 million ideas where, and for me, like, I don't have that. Money's not the driving force, right? Like, I'm not trying to sit on an island and retire. Right. I work 80 hours a week and I get lost when I'm on vacation. So like, I want to just create a way to continue to do this for the rest of my life because it's what makes me happy.
I noticed that things started getting, I've always really liked it, obviously, and had fun, but like stuff started getting really, really fun when I got out of that like young mindset of like money and counting cash, and like the scales tipped. Once I stopped thinking about like trying to make money or like go get it, like things started getting really, really fun and the money just came, know, when you started really focusing on just what you really enjoy. And like my mindset was wrong, even though I liked doing it when I was young, I was still really worried, now as I've gotten older, I don't, it's weird. I've just lost the worry. Like whatever the fuck happens. And like, I don't sit around and wonder like, oh, is this, there were so many times when I was younger and like people around me where we were always worrying about, we're not going to make any money in weed anymore. And we've only got 2 more years left. And like, it just fucking inundated my brain, and that's all we thought about. And like, we'd talk about, and there was some kind of shift where so much work fell into my plate where I was able to not think about that. And then that's when it became really, really fun. And now looking back on that, it's like, I don't ever think about money. I don't worry about where it's going to come from, how I'm going to make it. It's just, I'm focused on like really good work, enjoying what I do, having fun. And then that creates for me. Yeah, no, exactly. And I think that there's a turning point where when you first start doing it and it's so dangerous and there's all these different factors that can fail you at any moment, you think, oh, it must be for the money, right? And then standing at the end of that line, you kind of look back and you go, there's much easier ways to make money in this world. Right. Like there are way easier avenues than like cannabis to make money. And then that
that realization kind of hit me as well, where I was like, okay, no, I'm not doing it for the money.
Right.
Why am I doing it? Oh, okay, I'm passionate. I love it. Why do you love it? For these reasons. And you kind of walk yourself down these roads, and then it gives you that ability to have fun with it again. So I think that it's just so important, you know, and then that out of that comes, you know, the ability to say no to the money when it doesn't feel right.
Right.
Not all money is bad, but you know, there's a good portion of it that I don't want to work with.
Right.
Probably more often than not.
Right. I mean, not all money is even good money. Like,
Yeah.
you know, and then at the point now with where we are, like having chemistry with who you're working with is like extremely important.
Yeah.
You know, like when you've taken on a job and you don't have chemistry, it's like pulling teeth. Like there's no motivation to help that person or that job or anything, you know?
Yeah. And I think one of the most important things that I learned is that you really have to invest in people. Like you have to invest in people. Those are the driving force of your business that's going to keep pushing you forward. And if you have somebody on your team that is really valuable and brings that unique skill set, like you have to treat them really well and give them the right tools that they need to succeed, and then get out of their way, you know?
Right.
And so I've been really blessed to form a team that I just absolutely love everybody on it. And we're all like a family. And so, yeah, you can only do so much on your own, and then you scale out of that and it becomes something else. And I think coming from cultivating and being a grower, we're so used to being the salesperson, being the everything to everybody, the geneticist, the, you know, water, the irrigator and all of that. And so as we kind of enter this like new world, and it's a lot of it is expand or die or partner with somebody or band together in some way, shape or form. You know, my process now is really learning how to delegate, because for something for so long that was just like totally within your control, now you have to depend on other people so that you can go to Michigan or you can go do these other things.
Your team is so crucial.
Yeah, it's everything. It's everything.
Critical. Do you find that, I mean, it's kind of like this industry, we have a lot less women than we do men. It's kind of like, feels like it's more of like a man-driven industry. Do you find that like women reach out to you and like you're an inspiration for women trying to navigate the industry?
Women like definitely reach out to me. The flip side of that, like I get asked a lot, like, how are you going to like personally include women in the industry?
Oh, like you yourself, like how are you going to involve them?
Yeah.
Like you have to carry that burden?
I guess. And for me, you know, I run a like construction management firm. I'm around dudes all day, every day. And I love it. And that's my choice. Like I really like working with men. I always have. I think it comes from having older brothers and, you know, just growing up the way I grew up.
And being strong.
Like I relate better to men in the terms that like, it's logical. If there's a problem, I don't have to figure out somebody's feelings about it. And that's just the way that I'm personally wired. Like I'm weird. It's not an emotional journey for me. Like it's that's the problem. Okay, what's the solution? Let's fix it. That's a lot of the way that I think. So I think that's why I get along with men so much. In that same note, I have amazing women that I work with as well. And when I first started Cultivo, I had this vision of like this Charlie's Angels, like, you know, hot girls that do construction and come in and like build these grows, and then like nobody wanted to join me. I was the only one. No one applied. I was like, I would love that.
Seeking
like,
women too.
Come apply. They're like, wait, Okay, you want me to stand on a construction site at 5 a.m. and
Right.
watch people swing hammers all day? No, that doesn't sound good. So I'm always like, yes, if you're crazy like me and you're into those things, like, please come apply. We'll give you a job.
You get asked to speak like a lot, and I see you, speaking out of a lot of events, or you're on the list all over the place. Does that at some point become more like a burden? Do you feel, or do you feel like that you're this voice?
I started speaking publicly because there was so much misinformation in the industry, and I was watching people waste millions and millions of dollars on facilities that didn't need to be wasted. And I wanted to kind of just bring light to some of these issues that we had with cultivation, because a lot of times the most highly incentivized products don't work. You know what I mean? If you were building a facility 5 years ago and you wanted to put LED lights because someone told you that this was the best thing since sliced bread, you would have spent double on the amount of lights, depending on the facility. Like, that could be $1 million order just on your lights. And when we ran like side-by-side tests on some of the first original LEDs, they weren't yielding higher. They didn't have the right diodes. The technology wasn't there yet. And so new companies in a nascent industry love to guinea pig their audience. And it saves a lot of time and money in them having to do that R&D themselves. So they're like, oh, all we have to do is go out, find a few big grows, sell them on these lights, and then it catches on like wildfire. And so I just kind of wanted to dispel like a lot of the myths of companies that sold products. Like, my company's never sold products. We sell services, and we sell design, but we don't sell, like, I've never taken $1 for any light that I've sold or anything like that. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but it gives us the ability to be objective when we're selecting products. And so, yeah, that was, I think, why I started public speaking. It was also a form of free advertising and and just getting our name out there.
Who's your go-to for LED, like when you're recommending fixtures?
It used to be Fluence, then it became Lux. I'm still the last person to jump on board with LEDs, depending on what the client is doing and how they're scaling. Again, our buildings are so expensive already that doubling the price of your light, and LEDs, their output ratio is just getting larger and larger. You've got an 860 watt versus 1,000 watt on a smaller footprint. It's roughly the same amount of power. I know there's savings in HVAC that they talk about and things like that, but I don't always get it. It's just throwing the heat off the backside of the chip in a room that's moving its whole cubic volume of air anyways. And so I wasn't seeing a lot of the, not to say that they're getting there now, but people have been trying to sell us LED lights in our facilities for 8 years, We even had like, here's a free shipment. Here's a free shipment. Sure. Just use them. And, and then you use them and you're like, okay, yeah, it's not worth the extra $1 million price ticket. Now, if you have market share, you built your facility, you're rocking, you want to do something a little bit different, then maybe go into that space. But if you're just starting out and you're just scaling for the first time, giving someone like a stackable system. Alex is going to hate me for saying this.
Well, I was going to lead to my next question.
Sorry, Alex. Giving someone a stackable system their first time out with a bunch of LEDs is going to be just very, very expensive. But if they're already operating and they're ready to scale into that, I always say, try it in one room first, try it in a couple rooms, make sure you like it, then revamp your whole facility.
So, with that being said, my next question was double tier or single, but you kind of answered that question right away with just the fixture. One thing that I can tell you right away, just from being growing it with LEDs the last 3 years, it's strain specific. Like in a DE room, I can pretty much grow anything across the board and have good results.
Yeah.
When I there's plenty of strains where I'm like, this is on the blacklist. Like this is not looking like it should. It's not turning out the way it should. Like there's strains that do not do well under that lighting. And I can't tell you why, but it definitely has something to do with the way that light is processed by specific strains.
Yeah, and different lights have different diodes, different spectrums, and I only know enough to be dangerous. But I've seen the side by sides. I look at the ticket and then I look at the energy output of that actual fixture, because at the end of the day, the math question I am trying to figure out is how much does that pound cost?
Right.
Without a big fish story. Like how much are your actuals? What's going in?
Right.
What's your kilowatt hour? Like we get crazy with math when we're designing a facility, because the person putting 20 or 30 million dollars into that facility, or 5 million, whatever it is, they want to know what's that ROI look like as a developer. So if you go in to develop a high-rise apartment building, those level of developers know if I put this knob on this cabinet and these countertops, I got 5 years at this lease rate to make back my ROI. You get into these construction jobs with cannabis and it's insane. It's like, how much is this going to cost? Oh, we think it'll be about 5 million. Yeah, we're going to need 14 more to finish this project. And you're just like, wait, you guys didn't plan this out. So, I really try to give my clients the benefits of knowing their numbers going in. The stackable systems, for me, the biggest issues I have with them are the numbers. To add a second tier to your facility. And in some instances it makes sense and some it doesn't. But to add a second tier, I think it's about, I got a back of the napkin number the other day of like $25 a square foot. You know what it is to build a mezzanine, an entire second floor in your building, if you have the roof height for it? About $25 a square foot. It's less comfortable to work. The top level gets neglected because people are up there trying to tend plants. And if you've ever shoved a bunch of plants into a room and tried to work in it, you know that anyone working in that room is going to want to get out of there as fast as possible. So I like single tier, comfortable workspaces, keep the employees comfortable, have wide aisleways, accurate, the exact number of egress that you need, and get sliding benches. But make it a comfortable environment so that people aren't running out of the room and the plants aren't getting enough attention. You also have two different levels of air quality between your different tiers because of stratification. So your top level of environment is never going to match your bottom level of environment. You also have heat from the LED chips blowing itself, displacing itself to the root zone of the next level. And I've seen that cause issues, but I think they're dialing it. Like I'm working with a bench company right now to get their airflow just right. And, I'm excited to see where it goes. But right now it's pretty expensive. If you were in an existing facility and you're like, oh, I got all these orders and I need to double my canopy like tomorrow, or I'm losing market share and I don't have time to build a mezz deck and I don't have time to go through the permitting process, then stack system might be a really good, route to go.
I've yet to see like supreme flower from any kind of rack system. And I've gone and visited like some rack system or people online where like I'm watching on IG and I'm like, oh, they're crushing, like their flower's going to be good. And we get there and it's like, we're not buying it at $1,000.
Same.
We both got to attend the Grow Glide event that they had, which was really, really cool.
Yeah.
There's some takeaways from that, which were like kind of like really like for me on the outside, like was kind of like wild, and one of them in particular, there was a gentleman there and it doesn't look like he had ever cultivated before or anything. And he was like so excited that I don't remember the number and don't quote me, but like he bought an ungodly amount of like double tier, from Darren and Grow Glide.
Yeah.
And he looked like a doctor. Like this dude looked like he belonged in like...
See the one with the giant development?
Yes.
Where he built the city?
Yes.
He like built a city of cannabis and then double
like
tiered
has
it.
yet to operate it or anything like that. And, and like I'm looking at him and he's so excited and so eager and he's throwing his numbers around. And I'm just like in my mind thinking to myself, like, does this fucking guy
spreadsheets
have any
love
clue
double tier?
For sure. For sure. But like, I'm always thinking like,
They pencil well. What doesn't pencil is what happens.
what are they like? This dude is smart. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, this is a very smart guy.
Yeah.
Where's like, what do they think when they have, like, when it comes to like selling flour? What's their plan? Like, he's in California.
They think they're making widgets and that they're not dealing with an agricultural product. And so I think in instances like that, they have more issues than just the products they've sourced. You know, you're gonna have to get someone to run that city and know what they're doing. But yeah, I mean, I think there's certain instances where it makes a lot of sense, and I do think it's getting there. And there's companies like Grow Glide that are absolutely like, how do we get the environment right? You know, and they came up with those catwalks that are pretty ingenious to get between the tables and stuff like that. So
I think everything Grow Glide's done is crazy impressive.
Oh yeah, no,
I think
it's
they have
funny.
the nicest rack out there.
Absolutely. And Darren and I met on a project years and years ago that was in downtown LA. And he was like, well, what do you think about these stacking systems? I'm like, I know, they're horrible. Get them out of here. They'll never make any money. And then I saw him at that event for the first time, and I had to eat my words because he built this like giant company.
It's impressive what he's done.
I was like, remember me? Remember you told me this was a terrible idea? And I was like, yeah, good job.
Yeah, right.
Congratulations.
When I first met him, it was like 2.5 years ago, and he just developed like his first prototype and was like rolling it in a shop, you know, on wheels on the floor. And
they're killing it.
I mean, what they've done is insane. I can't even like fathom like that kind of growth, you know, but the racks are gorgeous. They're fit and finished. They're a lot more money than the competition, though. I will say that.
Yeah.
You know,
are they?
It's big. Yeah. Like when I've priced them out on some projects I'm working on, it's like some of them are 30,000, 40,000 more. Because the only time that I always recommend triple stacking veggies.
Yeah.
Like I love the multi-stack in veg.
Yeah, I'll stack a veg.
Not in flour though.
No.
You know, and their racks are, I mean, obviously you can look at them and see they're built different, so they're going to warrant a different price.
Although I usually have to stack veg because they usually never allocated enough space in the first place when you walk into the building and you're like, this is your veg, really?
Right. Everything goes vertical. We're going to need
another tier. So yeah, they work really well for that. The other thing I don't like about them is they're ridiculously hard to clean. So if you get like a pest or pathogen introduction into a building, like
you're relying on fogging that problem out of your situation.
Yeah.
You can never get under the rack. You can never clean the tracks. You know, it's
like clean rooms function on as little amount of surface area as possible.
Right.
You know, so I don't like cocoa in spaces and heavy particulate medium because it just creates more issues for pests and pathogens. But yeah, but yeah, I like them for certain things. I don't go in recommending them to everybody. You have to really use it as a case-by-case scenario. Like I'm always asked, well, can't you just like develop one building and sell it over and over and over again? Like, yeah, it would be amazing. Right. I would love that. However, like everybody's needs are different, and I have yet to do the same thing twice, you know?
I mean, like you said just a minute ago, ag, that's the big factor in all of this. You can copy things. If we were making something, you could put it in any state, anywhere. It would all run the same. You bring something agriculture in there, and there's going to be variables. There's no way around it.
Yeah, it's not a widget. And then I've seen, you know, when I look at people's books of like what they've spent, because a lot of times I'll review projects after they've happened to figure out if there's a pathway to help. Like it used to be that 80% of our work came from fixing projects that were misled in one way or another. And then I went from that to kind of like, okay, only new projects. But in doing that, you realize like, you know, you'd walk back some of these books and realize some people spent over $400 a square foot on their facility while this guy spent 80. And it's literally like for like the same facility. So I'm asked to do that a lot when people are buying existing grows. They're like, well, we put 20 million into this. I'm like, it could have been 4.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So just because you put 20 million in doesn't mean it's worth 20 million.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all.
And outdoor is very similar in the way people cultivate outdoor. We're seeing these wildly varying cogs from people that have large scale agricultural equipment, the ability to row crop things, versus hauling in soil to fill 200-gallon smart pots. Like, those cogs are going to be wildly different. So I think as things progress in this industry, you know, the people that stay on board are the ones that can transition, that know their numbers like the back of their hand, and have the lowest cogs with the highest quality product. And then on top of that, you layer over really good branding.
I'm going to jump subjects here for a minute, but you have like one of the most beautiful koi ponds like I've ever seen before. That thing's amazing. And I remember the first time seeing it, like I saw the lines that you have strung across the pond to protect the fish. Mm-hmm. How old are some of the fish that you have in the pond?
Yeah, so I can't take credit for the pond. The pond was there. You probably could not build that same pond today.
Because the county wouldn't allow it?
Yeah, probably not. And so the original owner who built this home, as his kind of dream home, built this 350,000 gallon koi pond. And it can also be used for fire suppression. We live in a high fire risk area, so they can drop a line right in there and use that water to fight the fire if necessary. And yeah, so the koi pond, some of those fish I think are probably close to 15 years old.
Wow.
And so the lines stretch across it. It's basically fishing line that tethers across to all these different areas, and it keeps the eagles and the osprey from flying off with a sushi dinner.
How big are some of those 15-year-old fish?
Probably like this.
Wow.
Like, they're pretty big. They're like a form of carp. And when we got there, we went and like drew pH on the water, and it was at like almost 10.
Really?
And koi function, like mid 7s to mid 8s, somewhere in there is like where carp are happy. So I sent it to my friend that's a microbiologist. He's like, I'm surprised these fish are still alive.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's completely green because it's shallow and it's hot where we live. Right. So it's like a natural algae bloom. So when I got there, it was completely green. It was pHing at 10, and we were like surprised the fish were still alive. So my friend that's a microbiologist gave us some steps to kind of correct the biology in the pool or the pond, and we got it corrected over several months, and so now it looks like the Caribbean back there.
Have you noticed any difference with the fish? Do they seem happier in that environment?
I'd like to think so, but it might be in my head. I don't know.
Was the fishing line...
There's more babies this year for sure.
Really?
Yeah, there's like a ton of little baby koi fish swimming around.
Is there ever an issue where there's going to be too many fish in that, like where you have to pull them out or anything?
I don't think so. I mean, it's a big pond for...
Was the line stretched on it when you bought it?
It was, but we've had to like actually go through and retool the line. The winters and wind and stuff will degrade it, and it gets slack. So I have to go through and retie it. So
do you still see the birds come down, or do they?
They sit around on the treetops and like definitely scope it out, but I haven't seen them.
So it's like they know that the line's there, basically?
Yeah. I think they know they can't land on it.
Like someone came down at one point and was unsuccessful and let everybody know?
It got tripped up and yeah, maybe. I don't know.
That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a pretty unique property.
How far are you from the fire line?
I mean... Our whole hill is probably a high fire risk area, but we have 16 acres of cleared property on the 90 that we sit on.
Around the property?
Yeah, around the house and everything, and the vineyard. I think it's about 16 acres cleared.
Is the vineyard producing?
No, I took it out to grow cannabis, and then we didn't get our license in time.
Oh, so that's the plan of where the vineyard was?
Yeah, I'm repurposing the old vineyard to plant cannabis.
That's going to be magical.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing.
And are you hoping for this year or possibly next year?
I think we're going to... Realistically, we're going to queue it up for next year. We probably could get it done this year if all the stars align, but I'm an over-preparer, so I think the county seemed to get confused. Like, here's your license. And then you're like, okay, I got 60 days to pull this together
Right.
and find amendments and fertilizer and do ground prep. And like really farming outdoor happens, 6-8 months before the plants are even in the
Right.
ground. And so if you don't have that time, you're running it really close. And so I
Right.
feel like it's just too close, even if we get our license this year. So I think I'm going to sit this one out and focus on manufacturing and then producing products for all the small farmers in our area.
That's cool. I think you're like a unicorn in our space, like what you've accomplished and like what you've done and how much inspiration you've had on people that I know. And it's really remarkable. Like I respect you tremendously.
Oh, thank you.
I thank you so much for coming and you're not even home. You're coming from LA, stopping and seeing me to get home. Like I appreciate it so much. And I'm stoked that we're neighbors, and I'd love to come up sometime and see the pond and
absolutely
see your place. Like it's just gorgeous in pictures. And for me, that kind of stuff has been very important. Like the one piece of property I had that was licensed, it was like before it was just, okay, blow this whole fucker out. It was very important to me, like how my property looked, what my neighbors thought of me, like who I was, as like an individual and caring about the land and making it look beautiful. And very few people are operators where they take into account like what their property looks like and how it is versus just like blowing it up and making money. So like I see that clearly.
It's super important, and it happens in indoor facilities too, where I never got how anyone could just destroy a house or a building and make a bunch of money and then move out and leave all their crap behind. And we've seen it in grows and on properties. And so I always try to leave the place better than I found it.
Right.
Like I'd tear down indoor grows and you couldn't find one eye hook in the wall.
Exactly. It's nicer than it was when you moved in.
Yeah, exactly. So someone gave you the benefit of using their space. The earth gave you the benefit of the land. Like,
right.
Give it some respect. So you're welcome anytime.
Thank you.
You can always come up and see us. And I look forward to what you have cooking in the future in Michigan and all these exciting places that you're traveling to. And, mad respect. And yeah, we met at that event and I was like, this guy's fucking wild. Like, he's out of his mind. And then started listening to you. Luckily it was a 3-day event, but I was like, actually he knows what he's talking about.
I am definitely cool. Like a little out there crazy. Like I had like the most amazing childhood, like growing up in the woods. Like I was born in this tiny little cabin, we didn't have running water or power. And
oh, really?
I've been so blessed with like just this wild imagination, and it's always, I've always carried it with me, like I feel like a lost boy where like I'm like super young at heart and like young in my mind and like I say some wild shit, but like I feel that way, I fantasize a lot, whether it's like fantasize about being a Viking or like a knight or like conquering quests,
And you do it. You're like, I'm going to put that on a shirt and people are going to buy it. They're going to flock to it. And then you find these other Vikings that are like, yeah, I'm a Viking too. Let's go for it.
And that's kind of like what we do anyways. Like we're told, like, look at our industry. Like we're not really accepted. And like to think about like what you and I came from, like it was fucking wild. Like what we were doing back then and the freedom that we were risking and it comes from like this pirate / like Viking life to me, what I mean? Like of just survival, surviving. And so like, it's really carried with me into my adult life. And thank God because of this industry, like I'm able to just do and be and act like just how I want. And like, people have been very accepting of it, and like people have been accepting of it who you'd never think, like Suits and like other people are like, fuck, we want to fuck with this guy. Like we want him on our team, like looking out and like seeing how I am. They've been very, inviting and
I think
blessed.
just like that, that unbridled honesty in any industry goes a long way, and people are naturally attracted to that. Like, even if it's not everybody's truth, like, this person is speaking their truth.
Right.
And yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you so much. Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.